All right. It looks like we're live here. Um, I'm going to kind of hang back for a second and see if any people pop on here, but we'll get rolling here very quickly. Yeah, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome. Um, Welcome to my second episode of Crypto with Chris. When I first started these, I kind of decided I want to do a couple different formats. Some of my episodes will be longer form with a guest, with some interviews, things like that. Other times it's just going to be a quicker, 20 or 30 minutes, breaking down through the news, looking at some charts, seeing sort of what the price action is like, talking about that. If anybody wants to come into the chat and engage with me, that's cool too. So we'll just kind of feel it out and see how it goes. Also, kind of a little bit of housekeeping, since I didn't do this last time, but if you find this interesting, please follow my channel so that you get notified of new streams, and I can, use all the followers I can get. I think it's cool. I mean, really, my whole goal with this is to engage with my audience, and and you have to be a follower to be able to chat. So please follow, and I really want to interact with people. I want this to be a fun exchange with everybody. I'm happy to answer any questions, analyze, any various charts you want me to look at, explain different indicators, all that stuff. So yeah, just yeah, hop in, comment, all that's great. Obviously, we had some huge news yesterday with Ripple. That was mega, and it's funny with the Ripple news. Like, I'm not a huge Ripple fanboy. I'm not Ripple Army guy. I don't really know if it's a good investment or not. But in terms of the news itself, I think the precedent that it's set from a legal standpoint is absolutely mega. I think that hopefully it's going to put the SEC on its heels a little bit and make it easier for some of these other lawsuits to kind of work out in the favor of the crypto space. Um, and and yeah, maybe also the whole deal with so many different projects being deemed securities. I think that there's now legal precedent in place for them to make arguments going forward too. So again, I just like anything that'll put the SEC on its heels because as we know, they've been really coming through and just kind of trying to kill everything as much as they can. So yeah, so from that standpoint, it was great. And I knew that, of course, there was going to be huge price pump from that across the board, and of course there was. But usually, of course, so anytime that happens, when it's a big news event like that, um, it usually dies down the next day. It's not like anything that can really sustain itself. So we'll look at the charts. We'll see what it says in terms of what happened yesterday, what happened today, and what I think is going to happen, in the coming days, and go from there. So yeah. On that note, let's start with Bitcoin. Big Daddy Bitcoin. So yeah, I kind of want to start here with it from just sort of a cyclical standpoint first, because that's going to inform my thoughts on this next chart that we're going to look at afterwards. But one thing I wanted to point out here is, if you watch my last episode, I kind of touched on how Bitcoin, goes in roughly 60-day cycles. Um, right now, we are on actually day 29 of the current cycle, so we're right at the midpoint. And what I was expecting to see here is a little bit of a dip down, maybe. But then, of course, we got the big run up from Ripple, and so we had the first pump up from the first initial run into the new cycle. And typically, we see a lull like that, and then we see one more kind of big pump right around day 40-ish, and then we'll come back down into the cycle low. So that sort of informed my bias, I guess, if you will, my thinking to see what I thought was going to happen next. So then let's kind of come over here and look at this. So once I was thinking that, I come over here to the weekly chart and I'm looking at Bitcoin and I see this big pump we got. And then we put up this 5-spot divergence, like bearish divergence indicator. And that was super ominous for me. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because normally we get the run up, we kind of get a level off, sort of like it did here. It levels off, and then the next cycle pumps up, levels off. Typically, you don't see on a weekly time frame such a level of divergence like that. I mean, if we go back and look at this just kind of real quick, you can see, it's been a solid minute since we had any kind of major divergence like that on the weekly. And by minute, I mean, years. Like we had basically the peak here at the end of 21. We had one here, and then we had one at the peak at the end of 2017. So it's not even that common to put up a bearish divergence flag like that on the weekly. So, in a time when I'm expecting upside based on the cycle, for it to do this really kind of threw me for a loop. And I was sort of in denial about it for a minute. I was just like, something's not right here. Maybe it'll just ignore it, or maybe it'll be sort of like one of these divergences down here, where it puts up a 4, but it's not really a massive uh, uh, pivot basically off of that. So I thought maybe it'd be something like that. And then of course we got the Ripple news, a few days later. So that pumped it, perhaps artificially, I think to a degree. But well, I kind of want to dig through this chart on a few different time frames and see what these divergences are pulling up. We got another one on the 3-day here saying basically sell, sell, which was sort of coinciding with the 5 spot. And so it really kind of made things look ugly. But at the same time, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. The sentiment is bullish. Everything is bullish. We're kind of in a new weekly cycle time frame. We're in a new daily cycle time frame. Everything should be pointing to the upside right now. So, um, yeah, there's some macro news out there that is a little bit ugly, but we shouldn't be seeing this, just at least on a technical level. We shouldn't be seeing these types of bearish divergence, sell indicators like this. Um, so then if we look at the day, it looks a little bit better. At least we got, kind of a buy signal ish on the downside here, on the bottom side for a minute. But then we had the Ripple news yesterday, which was great across the board, and we'll look at some other charts here in a bit. But just looking at Bitcoin, we had a nice big green candle, set a new high for this sort of range that it's in, poked above it, which was really, really good to see. But then of course we we get some bearish divergences even on the daily time frame here, and a number of them too, a big ugly colored candle here. In a sense, I'm not terribly surprised to see that because of the pump we had yesterday. So like, of course, you're going to get some, it's going to run out of steam, and you're going to see some of that, people taking profits, and so that's going to fuel some of these divergences, I think. Certainly, the momentum is going to die off, which really this is what this is indicating. Um, so yes, I was expecting something, perhaps more a 1 or 2. I wasn't necessarily glad to see a 4, but whatever. I still think, my bias is still to the upside. I think, again, going back based on the cycles, based on the fact that we're holding support here at this 10-day moving average, I think that just everything is poised for another run up, for another couple of weeks, I think. And I kind of have this 35,000 level marked out as a likely target. And the reason for that really actually goes all the way back to the monthly time frame. If we look at this, um, it's like perfect resistance right here on this candle body for 35,000. So I've been kind of waiting for that for a while. I figured no matter how we got up to 35,000, and no matter how long it took, that was going to be a pretty big zone where everything just kind of stalls out, and we're going to have to consolidate there for a while, I expect. Now watch I say that and we'll blow right through it. But this was a big level, and then if we look at it even on the weekly, it's even more apparent, because it really goes back years. I mean, this was kind of the level where we had the Luna collapse. And if you look at this, there's a bit of a cluster here. We've got a big cluster here, and we've got a big cluster here. So this 35,000 level has seen quite a bit of trading activity, going back to early 2021. So all of this is pointing to there's going to be some muck to get through here at this level. And so whenever we get there, I think that's where we're going to kind of stall out. So that said, I think, I'm expecting probably in the next couple of weeks a run up to around that level. I'd like to see it go higher. Maybe we get up to, along here, and this can serve as resistance. I mean, really, it's more of like a range. It's not even like a specific line. Oops, where's my square? It's going to look something more like, something like this. Oops. So I think if we can poke up into that range, anywhere between 35 and 38, that's very realistic for this current 60-day cycle that we're in. We may not. We may come down and bounce off this trend line first. Um, of course, who knows? But this is sort of the range that I'm looking for, and I think that's going to kind of take us through, late into the summer in this range. And then honestly, I'm not going to be at all surprised to see us kind of peak out at this 60-day cycle and come back down and probably even end up right around where we are now, by the end of August. I won't be at all surprised to see us back at 32, 33 by the end of August. So, maybe watch that run up, maybe take some profit around this area and let it come back down and see where it rests, and then we'll go from there. Um, Maybe around that time, if we get super lucky, we might start to hear some more news about the ETF approvals. I know 45 days is the deadline for the first opportunity for the SEC to approve these filings. I'm skeptical that they will on the first go round. If not, they can kick it down another 45 days. And then after the second 45 days, they actually can open it up to um, comment and like a hearing, and it can drag out for another 200 and I think 88 days or something like that. So there's a chance we're not going to hear anything about these ETFs even this year. But from the most optimistic standpoint, perhaps sometime around August, September range is a possible scenario, and that would be super cool. And I think that actually is what's really going to be the catalyst. But we'll come back to that. Let's see. Let's look at things on the daily here. So yeah, big run up, major divergences. I'm expecting it to come down and just settle back on this 10-day support line. We can see that both the 10 and the 20 have kind of leveled off. They're pretty much neck and neck with each other, totally even. I think that's a solid support level right there. It kind of coincides with this peak right here too, which is not a coincidence. So, if you look at that across the board here, this is your support level. This is where I think it's going to settle back down to, or it could just keep going, which would be cool. Let's take a look at XRP for a second. So, of course, as we know, XRP was the catalyst for all of this. So, yeah, we're going to see this big, massive run up. Kind of a kind of a funny side story. I had a long order placed at like 60 cents that it's been sitting there for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months now. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna hit this. It's gonna blow right through it, and it'll be a fun little quick trade, make a quick buck on it. And I don't know what I did. I don't know if I put the order in wrong or what, but I kind of put it in the exchange and then forgot about it and didn't really pay much attention to it. And when when the news came down, of course, I went to the exchange to look, and whatever had happened, it basically just blew right through and didn't fill my order, and that was pretty disappointing. So I didn't get to ride the wave and play, but it was still cool because lots of other stuff that I had obviously rose with the news too. So it's all good in the end. I was expecting it to get up around $1. It got pretty close, 95 cents. Yeah, 95, 95 too. So that was cool to see in terms of my prediction. And then, of course, I'm not at all surprised to see this happen today. And really, I'm not going to be surprised to see this bleed out even for a while. Although the good news is from this news, um, and from the precedent that was set, lots of exchanges that had delisted XRP have now relisted it. A lot of the bigger U.S. exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken, and even like I think Bitstamp and Crypto.com and a few others out there have all relisted XRP. So that's going to bring a lot of liquidity back into it, and we'll see what happens there. But none of this changes sort of the underlying fundamentals of the XRP project or the Ripple project. So we have to kind of keep that in mind. And so a lot of this is just going to be based on speculation, based on the precedent that was set from the trials. So yeah, I don't know. This channel, this show isn't really going to focus so much on what is or isn't a good investment. That's obviously not what I want to be talking about. But in terms of TA, this was obviously a level of resistance for a long time, and right now everything is way overextended, way outside the bands. Um, you know, like we're looking at 3 or 4 standard deviations probably overextended at this point. So obviously it needs to kind of get back within the bands. It's going to have to wait for like these moving averages, the 10 and the 20, to sort of catch up with price action. It's going to settle down. I bet you they're going to kind of come down and meet somewhere in the middle here over the course of the next week, and then we'll sort of see what happens from there. Is my guess on that. Of course, who knows? It could just continue to blow up. But it's funny with this. XRP is it's like a super retail driven coin, and so it almost operates like a meme coin in a lot of ways. And so I don't know. You never know. I mean, you could have people coming out of the woodworks buying this stuff that people that have been holding this for years, waiting for something like this to happen. So it's kind of anybody's guess. It's really hard to do TA on a coin like Ripple right now because of that sort of meme and because of that retail centric investor base that it has. So we'll see. Let's look at ETH. Oops. So yeah, ETH. It's funny. Right before this happened, the day before this happened, of course, I was like, I was looking at the Bitcoin ETH chart. Let's touch on that first for a second. And it's been kind of going down and down and down. Actually, this weekly is a good one. Um, and it got to the bottom of this channel, and I was kind of starting to worry because the Bitcoin definitely has a much stronger narrative right now than ETH does. I mean, ETH obviously isn't going anywhere, but just at this moment, I feel like for the next couple of months, really in particular, Bitcoin is the play because of the ETFs, because all the ETFs are centered around Bitcoin. ETH has its own narrative; it's separate from that, and it's fine. But I just thought that ETH or that Bitcoin had all the momentum. So even though I had this channel here drawn, and I think this was even from a monthly, if I want to say, yeah, I had drawn this monthly channel based on these candle bodies here. Um, and it's really been in this channel for this whole time. But at the back of my mind, I was worried that it was really gonna come back down, break through this, and even start to touch these extents here over the next month or two, like I said. So on that note, I kind of decided to transition a bunch of my ETH back into Bitcoin and ride that up. And wouldn't you know it, literally the very next day, the XRP ruling comes down and ETH blows up and totally outpaces Bitcoin in this moment. I mean, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's I really feel like it's kind of short lived anyway, but it was just kind of a nice little jab, like, yeah, just when you think you know what you're doing, crypto is here to humble you. So that's a lesson that I learn every day practically in this space. But anyway, I thought it was a funny thing to point out. Um, Otherwise, looking at this, it's really not terribly different than the Bitcoin chart. Big green candle, big divergence flag, and I think we're going to kind of see that across the board. Um, so so yeah, yeah, I really, we got a big retail pump, a big news pump, and we're going to be watching these charts, I think, slowly bleed out over the coming days, particularly the alt charts, because a lot of them pumped a ton. I noticed stuff like Matic and like the layer twos, Arbitrum and Optimism and Lido and stuff. Those all pumped, like some of those were up 20+% at one point yesterday, and off of just hype basically. And so none of that stuff is really sustaining, I don't think. And I think that that's gonna bleed out. So I do think Bitcoin still will show some relative strength. I don't think it's going to bleed out as much. I still think it's the place to be right now because of the ETF narrative, because and two, because of just like where we are in the 4-year cycle. I mean, right now it's not alt season. It's not time to be even really looking at alts. I'm not in hardly any alts at the moment, and I have really small positions because Bitcoin dominance is pretty much driving the boat right now, and it's going to continue to. And so eventually, I think the ETH narrative will pick up. I do think at some point too, once the Bitcoin ETF Fs get approved, which I think they will. I think an ETH ETF is will follow shortly, and we'll have that. I also think that we're going to see a lot of institutional money come in one way or another, and stake ETH, for that yield that it has because of the safe yield that it offers now. So That's going to be something that's going to drive ETH going forward. But in the meantime, it's still Bitcoin. Um, so yeah, that's that's kind of my quick rundown of the charts today. There's not really a lot going on. I mean, I could dig into some alts, but they all kind of look the same. Um, some of them are, let's see, like let's look at Optimism. Yeah, I mean, they're all going to just be big pump. Although it was cool to see, I guess, a few of them continuing to pump today. Um, and I do think the layer two is probably going to carry that because they have that strength. There's a lot of activity going on the layer twos lately, so that's not surprising to see. One thing that's been coming up a lot in sort of some of the communities I'm in is Solana, and I did want to take a look at that because that's kind of interesting on a couple different levels here. One, there's this big channel that I was sort of keeping an eye on with Solana going back quite a ways. And it had broken down through that and was really struggling on the underside of it to kind of get back up into that channel. And I was starting to wonder, how low it was actually going to get. I noticed it did set, kind of a lower low here than we had here. And so that was maybe a good sign, a sign of possibly a step in the right direction. Um, but, I still just yes, there's development going on, but there's not a ton of other stuff really. There's not actual like network adoption happening outside of just development, which is a good thing. Of course, you need development as a sort of seed to foster network adoption, but that's really the stage we're at with this. So it was interesting to see it pump up like this to this extent. Actually, we're looking at it on the weekly. Let's look at it here on the daily. Um, and to have a green candle again the next day, which a lot of stuff didn't. So now we're back in this channel, and we'll see if it can hold support now, if it can flip this level from resistance to support and stay within this channel, or if it's going to kind of bleed back down. It's got a little ways to go, and I think something to kind of keep an eye on here. We'll look at that Bitcoin chart here in a second. But I think something to keep an eye on here is the fact that it is very overextended. So it's going to take a minute for these moving averages to catch up to the bottom of this range here. And so, that's a good reason why we might see it poke back down below. But I don't know, we'll see. Solana certainly does have a lot of supporters. It has a fervent base, and time will tell. But it is interesting. And then on the Bitcoin, it's the Solana Bitcoin chart, which I follow a lot because really, I'm not opposed to kind of holding Solana, but I just wanted to wait until it was outpacing Bitcoin before I even really gave it a second thought in that regard. And so on the weekly level, it was interesting to see here against Bitcoin. It really definitely pumped out of here. We got a strong buy signal on the divergence indicator, and it blew all the way up to the top of the Bollinger Bands against Bitcoin on the other side. So that's a good sign. It's still not it doesn't quite constitute a full trend reversal yet on the weekly, which is really what I'd be looking for before I considered, getting any position in it. I'd like to see the 10-week here pump back up above the 20-week, and for price to kind of stay above both of these and hover, and be bouncing off the top side of these Bollinger Bands as opposed to the bottom side. And all of that remains to be seen. So honestly, it's still too early for me to kind of consider it, but this was a positive step for sure. This was definitely a step in the right direction, and if it can keep going, then yeah, it'll catch my attention, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to. This is going to be kind of like I said, one of the quicker episodes. I don't want to get too much into stuff. So so yeah, this is what I'm paying attention to these days. And I think Monday I'll come back and I'll do another one. I'll do an update, talk about what happened over the weekend, and see where price action is based on what we talked about today, and go from there. So hopefully next time, we might have some more people in the chat, and we can ask some questions and kind of engage with people. And then I think next Wednesday, I'm going to have another guest on, so that'll be fun too. Actually, James, who was on the first episode, I think is going to come back. And instead of me sharing my screen and talking about my setup, James is actually going to share his screen, and we're going to kind of go through, setting up TradingView, as a noob, as a novice, and what it looks like to kind of build out sort of a system from scratch and kind of get things dialed in. So it'll be fun to have him ask questions and me walk him through, how to get his trading view dialed in. So looking forward to that. So yeah, I guess that's going to be about it for today. Again, if you liked this, please follow my channel so that you can get notified of new streams going forward. And I'll put some links in the description of TradingView and some other platforms that I use and products that I use that have served me really well. And hope to hope to engage with you guys going forward. So thanks a lot.